Welcome to the San Clemente Podcast, the only local podcast in the best beach town in the world. We're here to bring you weekly episodes highlighting everything from sports, culture, entertainment, politics, and everything else this beach town has to offer. Hello, and welcome back to the number one podcast in San Clemente, California. I'm Jeff Moore, your host, and joining me today is my incredible co-host and good friend, Brian De La Puente. We have a very exciting podcast coming to you with an incredible guest, Rebecca Robles, who is a member of the Juaneno Band of Mission Indians. She is the co-founder of the United Coalition of the Panhe tribe, and we are very excited to talk with her further and hear more about the incredible story that she has. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Did we say that correctly? Can you?
Well, it's not really the Panhe tribe. It's the Panhe is one of the village, but
Okay.
I'm a descendant of Panhe village, and I'm a member of the Juaneno Band of Mission Indians, Acjachemen Nation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
It is.
And like we've been talking about earlier this morning, it's not something that we were taught in school. So
Right.
I'm excited to hear your story and kind of give a lesson to all of our listeners about the history, and it's in our backyard.
Yeah. So should we start with the event happening this
Sure,
weekend?
yeah.
Okay, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
So this weekend, March 24th, we'll be having a spring gathering at Panhe Village down in San Mateo at the campground. And this is our 16th year having it. We host it with the state parks, and it's a celebration of Native American culture. There's singing, dancing, history. There's environmental groups, and it's a very fun event. And we invite everyone to come down and join us.
Well, what are the times like throughout the whole day, or?
No, it's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay.
And then because it's a very small area and limited parking, we have a bus. The bus is at Concordia School. It comes every half hour, and people can park at the parking lot up at Concordia.
Okay.
And then they are transported down to the campground at San Mateo.
Awesome.
I didn't talk about the food. There's Native American food. There's fried bread. There's coffee, snacks. There's a taco truck. And like I was saying, there's singers, dancers. And
Very cool. And is this something you said 16 years. Is it
Yeah.
right around the springtime?
Right. It's right around the springtime. We used to have it at Earth Day, but there were so many competing events that we don't do it at Earth Day anymore.
Okay.
But it's to highlight the Native American culture because, like you were saying, most of us, not just in San Clemente, but all up and down the state, we know the history, but seldom does it start with the indigenous people, the
Right.
Native Americans that lived here. And so I'd like to talk about the Acjachemen people. And our history tells us that, for most Native Americans, we say we've been here forever, and that we were created here. We have creation sites, important villages. Our creation site is north in a place called Puvungna, and Puvungna means the gathering place. It's in present-day Long Beach.
Okay.
And so the area we lived was from the very south of Los Angeles County to our furthest south village is Uxmal, which is where Las Flores is on Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
And then we go to the east to the mountains, like
Okay.
Hemet, Corona, in
Okay.
that vicinity. And then obviously the Pacific Ocean. And I have a hard time with, the timeline, but like I don't really know what forever is. These archaeologists, anthropologists, they say that we've been here for at least 10,000 years. Some of the sites are like there are sites up in the Channel Islands that date back to 45,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so people have been here for a very, very long time.
Right.
And the reason I got involved in all of this was my mother. My mother was Lillian Robles, and she had a really big dynamic life. And she spent the last 15 years of her life in protection of sacred sites and culture sites because she had seen so much change and so little regard for the Native American history. And so she started she worked diligently to protect the sites, but what she said was that the land, that it was a repository for our culture, and that it was very important for us to go to these places,
Right.
to pray, to sing, to remember our history at those sites. And so we became involved down here. I was raised in North Long Beach. My
Okay.
mother was raised in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And our family left down here in in the in the 1800s. Actually, in 1834, it's listed that one of my grandfather from Panhe, that he was a cowboy, a vaquero on the Rancho Palos Verdes,
Okay.
Rancho Palos Verdes
Now,
Rancho, I guess it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're listed in the first census as living in Los Angeles, where USC is,
Okay.
and so most of us, many people stayed in San Juan, but many people left because the environment had changed, and we were removed from our villages and went. Well, I should go back a little bit. So the our people lived here, and in 1769 was our first contact with the other people, the newcomers,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the Portola expedition. And they actually came. They were the missionaries that were coming with Father Sarah,
Right.
and they actually came through Panhe. And at Panhe, they stopped. And that road, Christianitos, it's called Christianitos because when they came, there were two little girls that were, one was badly burned and one had some sort of illness, probably a flu or a cold, because we didn't have the same resistance that most of the Europeans had. So anyway, the little girls were dying, and so the padres, we can just imagine them trying to talk to their
Sure.
parents and baptized them. So they baptized them there, where San Mateo Creek and Christianitos Creek come together
Okay.
over there. So that's why that place is called the Christianitos. And like all throughout town,
Oh,
you
that's
see
a great story.
Los Christianitos, and but it refers to those little girls that
Gotcha.
were
Were
baptized
baptized.
there, and it was the first baptism in all of California.
that is one of the coolest stories. I live off Christianitos, and
Uh,
every time
Yeah.
I'm gonna be getting off there, I will look at that differently now.
yeah,
And I've been getting off that exit for 40 years.
yeah,
Right.
Wow.
yeah.
So the history is
First
that
baptism.
deep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And we can just imagine, parents whose children are, like are passing away, and everything's changing. So anyway, so from there we were inducted to the missions, and we were kind of forced to go to the missions, and we were the labor source, and it was the average lifespan of someone who, once they went into the missions, was 6 years, because it was a very harsh environment.
Wow.
You know, the the Spaniards, that, like, they were soldiers, and so
Mhm.
they didn't come with their wives. So anyway, the the men lived in a barracks and the women lived in a barracks. The women lived with the children. What I understand is that there was very limited food. They were worked very hard. What I've read was there were, like, were provided 600 calories a day
And then expected to work.
and expected to work. So it was a very harsh.
Sure.
It was very harsh, and it was a big change because the people had lived, in small villages scattered throughout Orange County and San Diego County, and then a whole different lifestyle was forced upon them. So we survived, like, and there was great change because we were under the Spaniards and the mission system, and then it became Mexico, and then it came in the United States in a short period. And each time, the the rules changed,
Right.
and so we had to adjust rapidly. And there was a lot of sickness, a lot of displacement, and I was alluding to it. It was like, it was a very, very harsh time, but we did survive. And like, um, there are
What year was this
Oh,
again?
okay. So
Like, so you're
1769
okay.
was our first contact,
Mm-hmm.
and then California became a state. I don't know the exact dates for
Roughly,
the
yeah.
California became a state in what is 1850? Yeah, so that's a
And you said your family, you had a grandfather that moved up to L.A.
yeah
in the 30s
1830. We
because
left
of that back and forth turbulent lifestyles and displaced.
survival is what it
That moved
was.
him up
you know.
there.
Yeah, you were doing whatever you could to survive and keep
because
everything going.
the people had lived in villages, and we were forced to leave the villages and go to the mission, and the village, and so we couldn't go back
Right.
to we had the way we previously lived because the mission soldiers would go and round us up. Many people fled and went to like Paula, Saboba,
Why
over
were
there.
they like just for a safer, easier life, or
They didn't want to live in the mission. They didn't want to live under that system, and survival.
Sure. So just for the Juaneno band was several villages in this area that were all pulled into the San Juan Capistrano mission.
Right.
So every mission up the coast essentially had a group of villages that they pulled from. Is that correct? And that's kind of how you talked about like the San Luis Rey mission having a band of Indians down there. There was one up at San Gabriel. Okay, so that's kind of how that label was kind of given to the villages.
Right.
This is where you belong. This is the whatever you.
So if you lived in a certain region, you all the people that lived around here were in. When I say around here, in Orange County and North San Diego County, were inducted into San Juan Capistrano. Okay. Then all the people that lived in, say, if you lived in El Monte or Azusa, you were inducted to, or downtown Los Angeles, you were inducted to the San Gabriel mission.
Gotcha.
And who was inducting the people?
Padres and the force was the Spanish soldiers.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So.
That's wild.
Yeah. But
anyway.
So
Panhe was a big village in terms of villages. Like,
let me just say, like it's really hard to think because there's so many people here.
Right.
But at the time of contact, they say that there were probably 350,000 to 500,000 people living in the whole state. And so we can't imagine that, because our cities, there's 350,000 people,
Sure.
you go to a concert, there may be that many,
Right.
It seems like that many people. So the state was, it was empty compared to now.
Right.
It was empty. And one thing that the soldiers said when they came was that it looked like a garden. It was, we didn't farm, but there were controlled burns. People didn't own the land, but there were like families had areas where they tended the land.
Gotcha.
It was so. One of our main food sources was acorns. Okay, acorns were 25% of our diet, and so maybe a family had several acorn trees in an area that they took care of, and they did controlled burns, and they trimmed the trees, and then they collected those, and it was known that was their patch to take care of, and other people wouldn't interfere, wouldn't go over there and use those trees, and like basket weaving patches, things like that. People tended those plants.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was it's hard for us to imagine people living that way. And you were asking about the size of the villages. Most villages, there were like 250 to 300 people. In Chumash, or the people that are in Santa Barbara area, their villages were a large village would be 1,000 people, and even that's small compared to the way we live now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what was the hierarchy in these villages?
Okay, there was a traditional chief, and his main responsibility was to make sure that the ceremonies were done at a certain time, and then there was a new who was the spiritual leader, and there was I can't remember the name for it, but there was like a spiritual center in each village, and then and there was a corone who was the female leader, and then there was each of the villages. It was mostly family and extended family.
Now, when you say spiritual leader, are you at this point religious, or is it more?
It's more a lifestyle, is what it. You know what it's like. It's not a church. It's someone who. It's a lifestyle. It's every day living. You know.
Are you trying to stay connected to like descendants and people that have gone before you, or giving praise to the land and the food, or?
I think that I know that there were certain ceremonies done at certain times. I know that that person was responsible for leading the people, and like if there were problems, helping with problems. You know, so but it wasn't like a religion. It was more like a counselor or
Yes.
a person designated to be help the people through their daily lives.
Gotcha. Cool. So now we're kind of cruising through history. We have missionaries. It's rough. The tribes are getting split up. The tribes are getting pulled into helping build the missions or solely build them. Once a mission is completed, what is it then?
Okay, so then, so the mission, it was established to be like a pueblo, you know,
Okay.
and the land was it was supposed to only be for a period, like 10 or 12 years, and then the land was supposed to go back to the people, the Indian people, and then that was under Mexico, but then it became Spain, and in Spain, the way they divided the land was they gave large land grants to soldiers and people who had been helpful in establishing
Territories and area. Yeah.
Wait, I said that backwards. It was Mexico. No, it was Spain, and then it became Mexico. It was Spain, and then it became Mexico. So under Mexico, large land grants were given to people who had been prominent soldiers or who had been helpful in developing the mission system.
Isn't that wild to think like that where we live now used to be Mexico? Like it used to be such a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think about that like in Texas where all this stuff is going on, you know, like, and you think, hey, remind them that was Mexico.
Yeah, that was Mexico.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just an arbitrary line, essentially.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah.
And that's what I find about the borders. The borders are arbitrary lines that were invented, and we didn't ever. I hear this saying, "We didn't cross the border crossed us."
Wow.
You know, and it like because there are tribes along the Kumeyaay that are in San Diego. They have, you know, they go back and forth because there are villages on both sides. In Arizona, you know, the Tanamo Oram, they have villages on both sides, and some of them have dual citizenship because they their families live on both sides of the border. So we were at the large land grants, okay, and then when it became the United States, what happened was the people who held the large land grants, they were they had large land grants, you know, like thousands of acres, but they didn't have any money, you know, and then they were the system changed under the United States, and people were responsible for taxes, and so then the large land grants were broken up. They couldn't maintain them, you know, and so they were sold, and that's how it became cities.
So the U.S. wins the war against Mexico, right?
Yeah.
We become a state, and then they start redividing, and at that point,
there was no land granted to the Panhe chief
existing like
hey, in the Acjachemen there were at Los Rios, you know, there were like small sections of land, you know, blocks of land, and but as far as like for other areas, there weren't. It was very unusual for an Indian person to get a land grant at all.
Wow.
There were few in the state that I even know of.
Wow.
Really?
So we became landless in our own native land. And like I told you, there were treaties. There were 18 treaties that were signed, but they were never ratified. And so we became landless. And so we have this very curious relationship with the land, because we have these real strong spiritual, religious. We know that our families were there for, we call it forever, but at least it's documented in mission records. It's documented that they were living there in the 1769. But we have very limited access to it because it's either private land or the Marine base. And that's why this is a good segue so that's why I got involved with the San Onofre Parks Foundation, because we were working to preserve the land and have access to the land, and that was one way to provide education and be be able to tell the story and the interpretive information that the state parks was putting out. And so I was on the board of the San Onofre Parks Foundation for 9 years. Yeah. So
what land are you referring to here?
I'm referring to Panhe. I'm referring to the San Mateo Valley and the San Clemente. Okay.
So when you talk about the San Mateo, personally, I think of the campground.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about San Mateo and the San Mateo Valley, you're talking about from where to where?
I'm talking about all of that valley where Trestles is, all the way up to the mountains,
And that's kind of people were sprinkled.
And it's that area is an archaeological district because there are so many villages in there. There are like at least 20 places where people live. Really?
So is San Mateo Campground itself
Native American?
Anything significant?
Oh, big time, big time. That's when we got involved in the like I told you, I was raised up in Long Beach. I always knew that my ancestors were from, I thought, San Juan Capistrano. But in the 1980s, it was the El Nino year, and our tribe got notified by Camp Pendleton that there was a burial ground that was washed out there, and in the campground there was a burial ground that was washed out there, and we became involved in doing the reburials, the tribal group. And then we did numerous ceremonies down there before it was a campground, and we,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, there's two. There on the south side, there's a large burial ground, and there's all these villages. And you live down there, but like most of the people who live down there have manos and matates, like even that the people had. I'm talking about stone bowls that the people used to grind the acorns and the seeds and everything that they ate. So there's this, like what you've touched on, is there's this vivid history, this ancient history that happened down there that people don't know about. And so that's what, like the at Panhe, the education is really, really important, like sharing with people, sharing with the public.
Sure.
That, we've lived here for thousands of years. This place is important. We have this love connection. Our ancestors are there. Our burial grounds are there. We've done ceremony there through the years. And then I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but in the recent years, there's been this, this big push to do land acknowledgements. You go to a public place and they say, oh, here we stand on San Clemente, the traditional land of the Acjachemen people. We honor your ancestors. We honor your commitment to the land. We live here now, and but we remember that you're here. Yeah,
that's a good starting point to be telling the story, right? Like,
yeah,
that's really a cool thing. And I think to a lot of people in San Clemente, I know that don't know the history, it's almost, you go down there, and because San Clemente is such a surf community, it's sacred to people down there.
Oh yeah.
So there's a
connection,
a shared, and you feel it. I mean, it's
I'm getting chills as we talk. I'm getting all my arms. I'm getting chills.
So in a certain breath, like it's sacred to us too.
Exactly.
Very much so.
Look at that word, recreation. What are you doing? Recreating. You're recreating yourself. You're connecting with like the land, the water, the people that have been there before, the trees, like everything, and so I know that, but it would tickle me when people say, oh, the surf culture here in San Clemente. And I say, yeah, there's a little bit more underneath.
There's a lot more.
Yeah.
There's thousands and thousands of years of history.
But I think, and like there's now the latest thing, like in addition to the land acknowledgement, there's huge land back happening. I don't know if you, like in the newspaper, if you ever see that, like the Yurok tribe in Northern California, they just received, I think it's 250 acres back, from the federal government. In Los Angeles, the Tadaviyams, who are one of the tribe at San Fernando, they just received 500 acres that were given back to them through a nonprofit. The Segorite Land Conservancy in Oakland, they've received numerous land back up there in. You've heard of them?
No, I didn't. Okay. I mean, these stories don't get
and then
shared at all. Are these undeveloped pieces of land?
Well, in Oakland, it's urban land, but they're in Oakland. There's shell mounds, that were burial grounds, and so the shell mounds are included. So it's urban land, but there's sacred sites on it. In Bolsa Chica, in Huntington Beach, the Acjachemen Land Conservancy just received 6 acres of land on Bolsa Chica Mesa, and they're a land conservancy. And so all land back is a huge thing that's happening, and there's all kinds of grants for tribes, and there's all kinds of things happening like they call it traditional cultural knowledge. Because everything's changing so much, and the global warming and the ocean rising, like scientists are saying, hey, look, the native people, they lived here a long time, and you can't tell, but you can't tell, and that's one thing that people always say, well, where's your pyramid? Didn't you build any any ruins here? All of our stuff was material. All our material culture was stuff that broke down. Our homes were
clay.
Quichas made out of willow. We call it quicha. The people up north, Gabrielinos, that call it quich. But anyway, and everything that we had broke down except those stone bowls that you see, the manos and matates.
Right.
Yeah. So
the impact is so much smaller.
I would do anything to be able to go back in time and
me
just
too.
live
Would you
a little.
Me?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Even for like a week and get a
Yeah.
glance. And that's why I enjoy this story so much.
Well, that's I mean, when you go down to surf, you disconnect. It's you're like, there's a very Christianitos, there's a very clear line, and you are now not in San Clemente. Essentially, you're in a little paradise. You're in a little
really special place,
and you can feel it.
You can absolutely feel it.
You kind of know that there have been people living here for thousands of years, respecting the land, living off the land. Yeah. It's apparent, and I understand why they chose there. Like it had everything.
And it had, I mean, like, it's easy to idealize it. I'm sure there were problems, but it had to be like a garden, and it was so much simpler, than the way we live now. And I think that's what, like, I think the important thing is that we're connected, We're connected to the important thing that I want to share is that we're connected to the land, and that what we do really matters, and that we like if we're in one of the things in Native American cosmology is that we're responsible for 7 generations, and so what we do has really long lasting effects. Think 7 generations.
That's a long time.
We won't, those people won't even really, if they even know our name, that would be amazing.
And that's a thought.
Yeah.
That's something that was passed down. That is something that
it's a core value of most Native Americans. There's 500 tribes in the U.S. And like in California, they say when the first Europeans came, there were more than 250 languages being spoken. Wow. California's, because it's so diverse, the tribes were small. That's where we started. How many people were in the tribes? Right. They were small villages, small tribes. We weren't like the Plains people who had a big, centralized and everybody was a tribe. We were family groups,
And did those tribes mix or not really?
Oh yeah,
they did.
Because really think about it. If you had 250 people living together for generations, you're going to be related.
Sure.
And so of course you'd want to marry somebody who was from a different tribe or a remote village from you.
Right. Were they civil?
Oh yeah, I think they were civil. I don't think that we were warlike. I do want to say I know in Central California, and I know that there was violence, but in Central California they had ritualized warfare. They had like if there were, and we also did. If there was some sort of infringement, it would be like like when you're in junior high. Okay, meet me at the park. I'm going to kick your butt.
Like with the tomato fields at Shorecliffs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you say Central California, are you talking like Santa Barbara?
No, I'm talking about the Central Valley. I'm talking
the Central
about
Valley.
Fresno, all that, in that vicinity, the Yokuts, where Kelly Slater has his, where he has his
wave
pool.
Yeah. But anyway, so it was like, okay, you come over there, we're going to talk to you.
Sure.
And the people, would line up on opposing sides, and they'd call each other the worst names they could come up with, and that's how we did it. In Central California, they had elk, and they make elk vests, and they would, the opponents would line up on each side, and there'd be somebody to hand the arrow. They had arrows, and there'd be someone to hand the arrows to the injured person, and on each side, and they'd shoot arrows at each other. And sometimes people would get hurt, but most of the time it just diffused the situation.
And then once that was done,
it was
the beef was squashed, and it moved on.
Yeah. Okay, be ready for the ceremony that's coming up.
Right.
Or we're going to go harvest those acorns.
Right.
So there were ways of diffusing the tensions that arise when you live with people.
So just fast forward to now, how are the tribes like organized? Like how does?
Okay, that's a good question. So like I said, we had family unit tribes. Okay, and then I can't really speak for the other tribes, but I know the larger tribes, they considered, like, say let's say the people out on the plains. They had large tribes, right. And they had chiefs and war councils and people that talked to each other, but we were small family units. Okay, in the 1940s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he said, "Okay, you guys, all you tribes, you got to have constitutions, and they got to be like our constitutions." So we had to the tribes had to establish constitutions that were role modeled after the U.S. Constitution.
So is it a Juaneno constitution, or is it the bigger?
But we didn't even establish a constitution until the 1970s.
Wow.
We
it's
were
only 50 years ago.
Yeah, we were we were a we were a community that had gone through a lot of disruption and a lot of change, and we were the you hear of Clarence Lobo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Clarence Lobo was the leader, and Clarence Lobo knew that we had lost our land base, and he tried to unify the people. And there was oh gosh, it's called the Federation of California Tribes in the 1920s. We there were people out on the desert. You know, when I say out on the desert, it's um, the meetings were out in Riverside.
Okay.
You know, but we sent delegates to that, and they were people that were trying to, work together to gain political power, to have more benefits and land.
Okay.
Okay, so in the fifth, I guess it was in the late '60s, Clarence Lobo, he was the chief, you know, and you'll see him with plain style war bonnet headdress, and he went to Washington D.C. to lobby for land for us, because there was a settlement, and California Indians who were landless were paid in the late '70s $600, you know, to settle a land claims.
Okay.
He never signed his check. He said, I don't want this.
Right.
I want the land. Our family never signed the check. My family said, no, you can't trust that. You know, we're not taking their money.
Right.
And Clarence Lobo went to the up the Ortega Highway and claimed a piece of land in the forest up there, you know, and encouraged the people to do the same. But he worked as a bus driver down in San Juan, and he had a trailer up there. The trailer got vandalized. The people didn't rally and and say, yeah. They
Right.
didn't support him. They were more conservative, or and so he left up there. And anyway, so I'm not sure where we were going with
Are
that.
there 500 tribes today in
the United States? Yeah.
I think that's what you're asking, right? Modern day, current day, like
yeah,
how
no,
many?
just what we started as
Oh.
as how did things get organized, and I was kind of just leading it up to you started the United Coalition to protect Panhe, right? So
Right.
can you talk about starting that and
Okay,
and
it was
the role that you played in?
okay. So I was co-director of it. There's a young woman named Angela Mooney DRC, and we saw each other. We understood. Okay, so we knew we had been doing ceremony down there at Panhe since the '80s,
Okay.
and we knew that it was a burial ground, and we knew that it was a sacred place, and we heard that the toll road was going to go through there, and we had worked with the environmentalists. We had worked with Surfrider. We had worked with, or I had worked with Surfrider. I had worked with Sierra Club. With Sierra Club, we formed a sacred sites task force, in Orange County, because there's other sacred sites also.
Sure.
So anyway, I saw Angela at Angela and I were from different, I didn't know her well. We were from different groups of people. And so I said, we can't let this happen, and she said, yeah, we can't let that happen. We can't let the toll road go through there. So we started working together, and we went to our community, and we got agreement that we had to take a really strong stand. And at the time, there was, there was a lot of knowledge that it would affect the Trestles, and there was a lot of knowledge that there were 10 endangered species in the San Mateo Valley there. And we said, hey, they haven't said anything about the Native Americans and the sacred site there.
Right.
It will totally alter everything there.
Right.
and all the little pocket mouse. Sorry, the little pocket mouse is getting more publicity, and the surfers are getting more attention than how it's going to affect us. And so we started. We just started going to all the meetings, getting support.
Going to city council meetings?
Going to city council meetings, going to Native American Heritage Commission meetings. We went to, like I said, we were already working with the Sierra Club. We went to Washington, D.C. twice. We went to Sacramento at least 3 or 4 times working with them. And then we started asking other tribes to support us. We had 23 tribes, that supported us and opposed the toll road. We went to the Native American Heritage Commission, which is a commission like the Coastal Commission, and we asked them to file a lawsuit because there's a law against it going through a state park, a road going through a sacred site in a state park. And then like the builders of the road, they said, well, it's not really a state park, it's leased land, but it did hold that it was against the law. And so the Native American Heritage Commission was part of the lawsuit. There was the lawsuit against the toll road down there. It was, the allies were Surfrider, Sierra Club. Oh gosh, I can't remember it, but it was like one of the environmental groups that, like not the Center for Biodiversity, but one of those big ones, But anyway, so we were part of that coalition.
Gotcha.
We became part of the coalition.
How close was the toll road to actually going through?
That's good question. So the toll road would have been devastating because, like I told you, the San Mateo Valley is an archaeological district, and it's eligible for being listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And that's what gets me is that, like, and this is something my mother would always say, we have this connection, but this is really California history. This is really national history. Everybody should be concerned about it. And when you look at other countries, like in Mexico, the culture sites, they're not owned by individuals or on private land. They're owned by the government, and the government says, hey, we got to preserve this. We can't let people build here. In Japan, I have a friend who's Japanese, and she said, same thing in Japan. Like you'll be walking in a mall, and then you'll see like this shrine or something. They build the buildings around it because it's considered an important part of the history of the country.
Right.
So,
but building some, that's crazy. Like support, like leave it the way it was.
Yeah.
Like,
well, can you imagine had the toll road gone through? Like, do people realize how big of a negative impact that would have had?
Oh, I do want to say too, the toll road, the place where we were going to, where we did ceremonies and where the reburials had been, the toll road was going to go down. It had to be the same level as Cristianitos. And so they were going to dig 32 feet down. And then the columns that were, the plans were,
supports and stuff.
the supports were going to be within 15 feet of where our reburial site was. And then it was going to span, there were going to be, those columns, the supports were going to be in there in the valley. And then there was going to be a road that spanned from Cristianitos all the way to Basilone, and then it was going to hook in at Basilone. And so all the on-ramps and off-ramps would have been really altered, because it would have to accommodate the freeway and the toll road. And so
it would have been a gigantic intersection.
It would have been a gigantic. And then it would have, the noise, the light pollution, it would have altered everything. And that's one of the few places that you can observe stars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important part of our culture also.
Yeah.
And then I brought this because I wanted to be sure that people knew. And then after, like in in 2020, no, in 2017, the there was a bill introduced in San Diego County. And it said that it put special places off limits, and it all county roads. The bill passed in both houses, and it prevented any roads going through federal property.
Okay.
Forever?
Forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's big.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
So the bill
That's
passed
massive.
both houses with overwhelming support, with the governor's signatures, and it successfully ended the long battle to keep highways out of the park. And it was Member Hovart represented Northeast San Diego County, and it was AB 1429. And so it protected, so that road's protected, or it's protected now. They can't build it.
They can't do it.
They can't do it.
So they won't come back at a later date trying to push that.
Yeah.
Trestles would have been different, right?
I think so.
I mean,
I think so. Of course it would have been.
The whole
everything. It would have changed the landscape of everything.
Yeah.
Well, so kind of wrapping everything up. I appreciate.
I'm like, I don't want to wrap this up. I want to continue to
just for the sake of time. I'm kind of glancing over here. We could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But what can people in San Clemente? It's sacred on many levels.
Yeah.
How can the normal, average non-member support?
Well, come to our gathering. Learn and be aware of the what tribes are here, because we're still here. What the history is, and take a deeper look at the true history of California. Mm-hmm. We've made tremendous contributions to society.
Sure.
And ask people, read, talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where's a good place that we can go find information? And I know when
I was a website, Instagram,
reading
social
up,
media.
the Sano Parks have a lot of really cool info on there.
Yeah.
Is that one of the?
That's one of the good places. But
okay.
but look up California Indians.
Okay.
Look up and realize that there's this history underneath, and then support the land back movement. Ask people, be open to learning.
Yeah.
And then put California. Like I said, I saw the Ole Hansen. There should be California people.
Mm-hmm.
There should,
people that came before that, right?
Yeah.
I know Brian's trying to take us out of here. I wanted to ask.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, no, but I don't want to leave.
No.
This is too good.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about the casinos. Why is that such a big part of the modern day Native American?
It's business.
Okay.
It's business. The business people. They didn't befriend the Native American, and it's the people inland, the federally recognized tribes. That's one thing also. We're not federally recognized because the treaties weren't acknowledged. The treaties weren't
signed.
Ratified.
Thank you.
Yes.
So anyway, it's business. It's successful business for the business people. They're getting rich, and then the casino people, their life was altered. They were super poor. They were super poor. Often they were on land that was less productive than other places. So it's it's totally business, and it's totally altered their lives.
What does the trajectory look like for the next 10, 15, 20 years for Native Americans?
Well, the land back is very
Do you have to be federally recognized?
For land back? No.
No.
Those tribes that I was telling you about, the K-Rooks are federally recognized, the people up in Northern California. Okay. But the Tataviams, who receive the 500 acres in north of Los Angeles, they're not federally recognized. The Tongva, the Acjachemen Tongva Land Conservancy that received that 6 acres in at Bolsa Chica, they're not federally recognized. And then other tribes, they become land conservancies. There's a Gabrielino individual gave 1 acre at Eaton Canyon to the Tongva tribe, And so they have a 1-acre land conservancy. It's very beautiful. It's right above Eaton Canyon. You know, there's a fall and the creek down there.
Okay.
It's very, very beautiful.
Do you anticipate, could that happen
Yes.
at San Mateo?
Oh,
I was going to ask, could that happen around here at all, where you could get land back?
I would hope so, because you think about it, like I would hope so. That's all.
Is that a city level decision, or that's a state?
It's how could I put it? There has to be an agreement. Like if the state would, like if we lobbied the state to give us land back, or if we lobbied the Camp Pendleton to give us land back and show, and established a land trust,
I'm sure that's actually because you have federal land, state. That's
over at San Mateo.
Yeah, that's a. There's a lot of jurisdictions.
Yeah,
down
exactly.
There. For sure. So up in like the Los Rios district of San Juan, like you go up there, which is near the mission too. Like that is a special area, right?
Right. It is, and that was the land I was telling you that we were talking about. Did Indian people get land trusts? And they did. There were tracts of land in the Los Rios district.
What is the current day Indian? What does their lifestyle look like?
A lower middle class, like everybody, kind of hustling, taking care of your elders, get your kids to school, trying to keep your kids out of trouble, trying to get them so that they can have a decent lifestyle. And then the other thing is trying to teach them some of your Native American values against, or in competition with the modern way.
That's how you became so passionate. It was because of your mother, and how
exactly,
and conservation and her efforts kind of passed on to you. So.
Exactly, you got it. But what my mother said was that our culture, the land is a repository for our culture, and that going back to the land was crucial for us. And then I know we're getting over, but when you look at society in general, we have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
The depression, the suicide rate, the violence, the homelessness. There's a educator. She's a psychologist. Her name is Lisa Miller, and she's affiliated with one of the back east, the big colleges back there. And like I can say this and I just sound like kind of some kooky lady, but what she says is that our connection, like that connection, that she has the remedy for depression, the drug abuse, and that it's like that we've forgotten that we're connected to the land, to nature, and then to each other also. And like she said, it's Columbia University. She said when she would do, like 20 years ago, when she would do these seminars, she said the medical people, the physicians in the room, they'd get up and walk out. But that in the recent years, she's been able to document it with MRIs and how the brain waves change and how, how the going to nature, we know that it helps, and that's why the surfing, that's why it's what keeps us sane.
Absolutely. You know what? Yeah, I'm so passionate about this too. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about how a lot of the technology that's coming forward, like red light therapy or saunas, are being grounded, right? Like going outside,
Exactly.
right? I'm like, this is going back to like when the people were the happiest back in these days that we're referring to, right? And being outdoors, and people are making a push for that, right? They want land, they want to harvest their own food. And
simplify, reconnect.
Yeah.
I love that message.
Yeah. So look up Lisa Miller, because she's really, and like I say, it quantifies, and that's a lot of the work that I've done. Like when I would go and, like talk to city councils and say, our ancestors' bones are there, they shouldn't be disturbed. Well, they'd say, yeah, lady. But if I worked with if the archaeologists, that I work with, if they say that site radiocarbon dates back to 10,500 years old.
You can quantify something.
Yeah. And so this quantifies, like and that's what that's why I keep working so diligently. To me, we're like we're not as mature as our technology, and we're moving faster and making all these changes, and we have the remedies. We have the remedies for society for these things I'm talking about.
Sure.
And it's not Narcan.
No.
It's being in touch with each other, taking care of each other, taking care of the land, making sure we have community, like you said, walking barefoot on the land, And so we have these simple remedies that will, eating, the food that we grow, and, connecting with our spiritual self too.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, and this is why Brian and I wanted to do the podcast, is because we want to be good human beings. We want to collaborate with other like-minded people. We want to be able to share great stories and hopefully preserve a part of the culture that we got to live growing up here in San Clemente.
And it's way different, huh? It's different than 10 years ago.
100%.
Vastly different than 10 years ago. And it's scary to think with where technology's at, where it's going to be in 10 more years.
Yeah.
And so it's up to us to share these messages and to help support these stories. And so
and that's what I feel like too. That's why I do this work. Like I go, we weren't super rich, but we had such a dynamic, childhood, like we could ride our bikes and our mom
100%.
would say, be home before dark.
That's exactly it. Absolutely. And that's kind of how we grew up too, right?
Yeah.
Be
I
home.
bet it was
before
really
dark.
nice growing up here.
Yeah.
I bet it was like idyllic.
We spent a lot of time down in that zone riding our bikes between the state park and just south of Carl's Jr. There was that whole zone. It was really great bike riding, and we spent a lot of time down there.
The main portion of the village at Panhe at Contact was in that low spot where the freeway is now.
Yeah, that's wild. And you know what's cool? My wife and I were just talking about this last night, and we're going to do it. We're going to get a campsite over at San Mateo, which is wild because we live right across the street, but there's something in us still where we want to go spend time outdoors, camping, like living that. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating that you still have that desire to want to do it?
Yeah. I'm going to camp Saturday night before our Panhe gathering, but it's cold. It's cold.
It is cold. It is
It'll
cold.
Get cold.
Yep, it'll get cold. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest.
That was a very fun. I think we could talk about. I like the reconnecting and the nature and because the historical. You don't hear the perspective of the Indians very often.
No, never.
It's always a doctor telling you or somebody but to hear a perspective and in closing, being reconnect, slow down, go get out in nature, and it's going to solve all your problems. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're very good at articulating your story. I literally could sit here for hours listening to you. So thank you for sharing your time and your passion and all of that.
You're so welcome. I want to tell you, when we end our prayers, we say, all my relations, and so that's the one thing I want to say is that our connectedness, we need to remember our connectedness, not just to each other, the human beings, but to everything, the earth,
so
the water.
you end a prayer with
all my relations.
All my relations.
Yeah. All my relations.
All my relations.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. It was really nice.
Thank you. Continue the good work and come visit us next year when we're getting close to the event.
You're always welcome. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Right on.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening in. Join us for another episode next week, coming to you from our studio on Del Mar in downtown San Clemente. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at the San Clemente Podcast and subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode.